Welcome in, everybody. I'm joined by D1Softball's Jenna Becerra. The college softball season is upon us, so we're going to break down a lot of topics and preview the season. Jenna, thanks so much for joining me. We're going to start with talking through the top 5 teams in the country preseason, and I want to start with the most overall debated topic coming into 2026, which was Texas Tech versus Texas for the number 1 spot. Obviously, in the ESPN USA softball poll, they were given a tie. It's been different across many platforms. In my personal Power 10 rankings, I ended up going with Texas Tech. So I want to hear your take on it. I'll give mine, and we can kind of talk about that debate just in its entirety. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, we're coming in hot. I like that. So why not?
I love it. Go ahead. What is your take on it?
I think there are arguments for both, hence the reason we saw the tie at the top for the ESPN poll. For me, when I first saw that, I was like, well, that's one way to do it. That's one way to solve this debate, is to just put them both at number 1, because it's just coming from different angles, right? For Texas, they return quite a few people, not everybody, but the battery of Tegan Cavan and Reese Atwood are back, for example. I mean, they're also best friends and roommates, so that chemistry is just undeniable, let alone what they accomplished this past season. I also think the fact that they're adding Vivi Martinez back, she was hurt this last year. That's a key piece at shortstop. I think the only thing harder than winning a title is doing it again, but they have those pieces still there. For Texas Tech, they obviously have the pieces too. It's the most experienced and high-profile transfer class that they've built sort of around Nyjah Kennedy, with Jasmine Burns, Mia Williams, Taylor Panel, Lagi Quiroga. It's a lot of that offensive support that they've been looking for, which is huge. Plus, they still have Maya Davis as well in the mix. I think for them, my question is that so much talent? How do you manage it, right? Like, how are all of these pieces going to come together? They have it. They have it right there. But is there such a thing as too much talent? There's a lot of management that goes into that, which I think Jerry Glasgow is very much poised to do a nice job with, right? Like, that's where he thrives. And maybe Nyjah, also with the 7 pitchers they have, maybe she can rest sometimes and stay healthy throughout the season. She threw 240 innings pitched last year, which was more than twice the next person in the bullpen. So, they both have the pieces. It's how does it come together? And I think a lot of it's going to end up being mental.
I agree. And that's why I had such a hard time with it with my Power 10. And this is exactly why. You just explained it perfectly. For me, ultimately, that was the main question. It was, yes, Texas Tech does have those pieces that are coming in, and all of these All-Americans across the country that are just top tier players from all of their respective former programs. How do they gel? How does the chemistry work? How do they pass the bat? How does Jerry Glasgow manage all of this talent and all of these All-Americans coming together on the same team? And that's a big question mark. But when I was thinking about it, I mean, I think I went back and forth a million times on it, going, Texas deserves the number 1 spot, right? They won the national championship. They bring back most of their pieces, and I almost did it. And I think I switched it last minute, right before I was about to record and publish the piece, just because I think it's undeniable the talent that Nyjah Kennedy is, and the fact that she was really able to carry them to new heights, to the championship series, with so much of it on her back, and with how many innings pitched that you mentioned. I mean, she threw almost every pitch in the Women's College World Series. Now adding in all this talent, I mean, I'm excited to see how it meshes. I took a chance saying, yeah, it's going to mesh. It's going to work. You bring that in with Maya Davis, Lauren Allred, and you bring in Caitlin Terry to throw a lot of, that's a bona fide ace to back up Nyjah Kennedy. I don't think you can deny that this is the most talented team in the country. So I went with number 1, and we'll see how it gels. We all could be wrong. So big debate there. Let's move on to the rest of the top 4, top 5. You look at Oklahoma. Everybody's debating Texas versus Texas Tech. Oklahoma's right there with them. And I think the question is, can anybody compete with those 3 teams? I mean, those are the 3 teams to beat this year, with Oklahoma bringing in Sydney Berzon, Miley Wachino. Thoughts on OU, Tennessee, and Oregon from your perspective?
I agree. I think Oklahoma's up there in the top 3 right now, at least coming into the season, right? It all changes when people get on the field and between the lines and we see what actually comes together. But with OU, the team can hit. This is a program that knows what they're doing. They led the SEC in home runs, slugging, on-base percentage, all in their first year in the conference. And they have those key pieces too, like Ella Parker, who I call Ella out of the Parker with the way that she hits.
It's a good one.
Patty Gasso, thank you. So she's a professional hitter, and we see that, right? Cassie Pickering, Gabby Garcia. There's so many that hit like double-digit home runs too, and they have 7 hitters, I think, that were over 300 last year, plus speedsters like Abby Dayton, Ilana Agbayani. Like they have so many of the pieces offensively, and they have a ton of high value freshmen coming in. Because obviously losing Sam Landry is a factor, right? And they have some transfers. You mentioned Sydney Berzon, who has the SEC experience, for example, and freshmen, and they're gonna use that by committee format. But I think versatility is going to be the key this year. So for them, they're figuring out that battery. Whereas their offense is certainly going to be there to support them as it has been. I think for Tennessee, this is sort of the opposite. Carlin Pickens comes back as well as most of the pitching staff. Obviously SEC pitcher of the year, the fastest, the hardest throwing pitcher, literally in the history books that we've had at the collegiate level and
in the entire world.
Yeah, right. Like literally ever. So with her 2 World Series in the last few years too, that's experience that you can't really replicate otherwise. I think replacing Sophia Nugent behind the plate, that battery is everything. So that's a factor there. But they did lose some of their top hitters. So it's how can they support that pitching staff around Carlin Pickens in this case. And Savia Morgan comes back. She's their top returning hitter. And I think Sophia Knight will be a key there. She led the nation in hits last year. So that's an important transfer. But I'm wondering how the offense comes together to support, because they'll have, one of the best in the circle already. Oregon too, I think Lindsey Grine, and I say this about her too, she grinds, right? Like that is just what she does. But not only her coming back in the circle, but Elise Sokolsky too. She was a key piece, and they were a 1-2 punch. It wasn't just Lindsey Grine all season long. She had 150 innings pitched herself. And then they have some big bats too, like Riley McCoy, Stephanie Mayake in the middle of the order. And some, I think, underrated transfers that beef up their offense too, like Elon Butler, Amari Harper. They're going to add some elements there offensively. And, they had some speed, like the Luchar sisters and Paige Sinicki and stuff like that have graduated, but they've beefed up that offense. So I think they still have all the tools as well. And they got that regular season championship in the Big Ten last year, but maybe they're looking for that tournament championship this year, and making it back to the World Series again, because it had been since 2018 before. So everyone has the pieces. There are certain areas where they're going to need to make adjustments and step up. But the top 5 in the country all went to the World Series last year, and they bring back a ton of talent.
I know, and I think it's those 5 teams were pretty undisputed. I think you can argue the order a little bit. I personally had Oregon ahead of Tennessee just because of those lineup questions with Tennessee. Yes, you bring back one of the best pitchers in the country and the hardest throwing pitcher in the world and the history of softball. But a lot of question marks with, I think they lost, gosh, I can't remember the exact percentage, but a huge portion of their home run hitters and just their offensive production from last year. So that's a big question mark. And they brought in a lot of mid-major transfers, which I'm excited to see because they have some flashy numbers at their former programs. Like you mentioned, Sophia Knight and Mackenzie Butt. So I'm excited to see how they translate in the SEC. And that'll be really exciting for Tennessee. But I switched Oregon just because I felt like there were a few more pieces that were returning from Oregon that I felt a little bit more sure about. And Oklahoma, I completely agree. I'm Sydney Berzon coming in the circle. This is the most dangerous lineup in the country, and we were so used to seeing them win it. So now I'm excited to see, they had 1 year off. This is a team that is never out. We saw it at the World Series last year. Ella Parker, professional hitter, walking it off. And just when you think they're done, they never are. But for the first time in what felt like a long time, they didn't win the championship. So excited to see how that plays this year. But we've got some really great teams in the top 5. I want to switch that to our topic, to the National Player of the Year race. I felt like for the past 3 years, the talk was, well, we're not losing this much this year, but I remember a couple years ago, it was that freshman class. It was that sophomore class. It was the Jordy Ball it was the Nigeri Kennedy, the Jocelyn Erickson, all of them that are now seniors. And this class is just absolutely loaded. So this National Player of the Year race, this pitcher of the year race is loaded. What are your thoughts on it? Obviously, Nyjah Kennedy, the front runner. You got Jordy Ball Fromm in there. What do you think about the race?
Oh gosh, it's going to be one of the most fun races that we've seen for National Player of the Year. And I'm always a proponent. I think there should be two awards. I think there should be a National Pitcher of the Year, at least on this same level with USA Softball, as well as the Player of the Year, because there's just too much talent, and it's nice to be able to acknowledge both. But in my view, Nyjah Kennedy, if it was just a pitching award, I would say like absolutely the front runner. Carlin Pickens, stats wise, actually right there behind her, right there with her in terms of ERA, in terms of strikeouts, all of those things. Yes, but with Jordy, in my opinion, she also was in, I think it was the top 6 nationally last year. She hit 462. She hit 23 home runs, 66 RBIs. She was slugging almost 1,000. Her OPS was over 1.5. She also stole more than 10 stolen bases. Plus, a 1.56 ERA, plus 200 innings pitched, plus, almost 300 strikeouts. So when you think of the whole player, and this is why it happens a lot with those two-way players, I'm like, well, those numbers just as a hitter are All-American type numbers, let alone what she also did as a pitcher and will likely continue to do. So when I think of player of the year specifically, I do tend to lean towards Jordy in that sense, as long as, she's still rolling the way that she did in her first year at Nebraska.
I agree. I completely agree. No arguments there. I think Jordy is, in terms of impact, hitting and pitching, you would argue the best player in the country. So no arguments there. I'll end it at that. Let's talk most impactful transfer. Obviously, we know, and I would argue that Texas Tech got the best transfer class in the country. I don't think anybody can argue with that. But when you think about an individual transfer, could you pick one that you think would make the biggest impact on their respective program for this year? I was going down the list and I was trying not to pick one from Texas Tech just because it seems like they're all going to impact. And I was torn between Sydney Berzon going to Oklahoma, filling in that role of what Sam Landry was for Oklahoma last year. And then I was also thinking about Addison Fisher going from UCLA to Georgia. This was a freshman that was one of the best freshman pitchers in the country. Didn't get a ton of innings just because of Taylor Tinsley and Caitlin Terry ahead of her. But now you're going to Georgia and you're going to be their number one ace likely. So in terms of impact, I'm very excited to see what kind of impact she can make and if she can become and evolve into one of the best pitchers in the country.
I think that's actually a really great pick because I agree the overall impact that we talk about that someone can have. I think that's really fair to think about Addison Fisher. I'm really excited to see what she does in the SEC this year and, going from the West Coast, going out East, like seeing what that transition is like for her. I'm similar to you where I was torn from a couple. One of the ones I also was thinking about was Sydney Berzon, and that has to do with her experience, being an ace. She played 3 years in the SEC. She also has 50 complete games, right? Complete games, let alone, wins and everything else. And she's already an All-American, but I think in the system that she's gone into, it could be a really nice fit in particular. Jen Rocha is really the best pitching coach in the country. And she has a history of taking good pitchers and making them even better and just getting them to buy into the system. We saw multiple pitchers in just the 4-peat alone, including key transfers like G. Juarez, Alex Storako, Kelly Maxwell. They used 5 different pitchers in the 2024 run for the national title. And then, of course, the transfer Sam Landry this past year. So, I think that system that Sydney Berzon is going into, it could be a really big impact for Oklahoma when they need it in the circle. But the other one I was also kind of torn about, I was with you, Texas Tech is such an easy just team to choose for the transfers. They have so many offensive weapons that they brought in that I wonder in terms of a single transfer if the main person to make a big impact might be Caitlin Terry. And it has to do with sort of what you said, she has over 330 innings pitched. She knows what it's like to be on the big stage in the tough moments, couple of World Series. She's the one who almost threw every single inning as a freshman in the 2024 Pac-12 tournament when they won the championship at UCLA. There's some depth there with a two-way player. She hit, I think it was 257, but really clutch moments, including at supers. Yes, like with South Carolina and helping UCLA go to the World Series. I think, that will help again complement Nija too, to where she's not having to throw as many innings. Of course, she wants the ball. She tells us that all the time. She wants the ball as much as possible. But that balance and, another lefty in the mix, they're kind of split down the middle in their staff with lefties and righties. I think that might be the tipping point, really, that makes the difference too.
And less pressure on Nija as well. That's a really good choice. Let's talk sleepers to make it to Oklahoma City. So for this, it's a little bit tricky to decide what a sleeper is, but let's just go outside the top 8. I'm going to go with South Carolina because I love picking teams that are just on the rise and a new face within college softball. This is one that we saw, you mentioned, against UCLA. This was a team that turned heads last year, was winning games left and right that we weren't really expecting, all under a new head coach in her first time being with this team, and just really Ashley Chastain Woodard. So really great things. We saw a lot of their players coming back, Ariana Rhodey being one of them, Lexi Winters, Quincy Lilio, Carly Shelton. So they've got a lot of pieces. They were close last year. They've got a great pitcher with Jory Hurd coming back. So I'm just excited to see. It seems like they have a lot of pieces. Could they take the program to a new heights in this generation and bring South Carolina to Oklahoma City? I'm excited. That's my sleeper pick. How about you?
It's a good one because there are a few programs who were so close last year, so close. South Carolina is one of them. Arkansas is another one. And I don't know if you count them as a sleeper because they are in the top 8. People recognize the talent that they have coming back, which is almost everybody, including like their 2 biggest pitchers, right? Robin Herron and Peyton Burnham. But outside what the top 8 looks like in the preseason poll, I would look at Nebraska, another team that was so close. That super regional with Tennessee. I mean, what's really much better than Carlin Pickens and Jordy Ball from going at it? We're going to see that in the preseason already too. But I think just with Jordy having another year under her belt, that we talked about like the big impact that she has offensively in addition to what she does in the circle. And I think that she has just elevated the program in a lot of ways that are more intangible too, just her presence and her leadership. It'd be hard to think, oh yeah, Jordy Ball from, she's not going to end her career in Oklahoma City. That's like hard to wrap our heads around. So I think Nebraska might be my sleeper pick.
Thanks so much, Jenna, for joining me. So much fun, and it's going to be a great softball season. So appreciate your time.
Yes, thank you for having me. Super excited. Most wonderful time of the year.